With First Alert Weather, this is WKYT News.
And we're continuing to track the flooding conditions across the area right now and a developing winter storm that's going to drop several inches of snow across the Commonwealth.
Plus, devastated communities across the Commonwealth now assessing the damage in the wake of the deadly floods. We hear from people in different areas across the region as they navigate the tough situation. And as relief efforts get underway, we're taking a look at how you can also help those impacted by the floods. Good evening. Welcome to WKYT News at 5. I'm Bill Bryant. Our Amber Philpott is live in Hazard for us tonight, and all across the Commonwealth, communities are reeling in the wake of deadly floods brought on by very heavy rain over the weekend. Governor Andy Beshear says at least 11 people are dead following the floods, and in just the last couple of hours, we learned another person was possibly killed by floods. This one in Scott County, that situation. The death toll is expected to continue to rise. Amber, I know you've been out in one of the hardest hit areas all day long. What have you learned and seen from being up close and personal to this tough situation?
Well, Bill, good evening to you. We've been in Hazard all day long, and the sounds of skid steers and scraping is what can be heard in this area of downtown Hazard. We saw truckloads of water coming in. We saw mounds of debris being pulled from some of the businesses in this area, and we saw people trying to move some of that mud that in places is so thick. It is what is left behind after the North Fork of the Kentucky River came out of its banks over the weekend and really swept through this entire area of Main Street along Hazard. We saw people who are tired. Some of them told us that they have not had a shower in the last couple of days, but all of them coming together to start that long process that we know of the cleanup process, Bill.
Yes, as we all know all too well. Amber, we'll be getting back to you in just a moment, but we do want to take a look at your forecast right now. More situations on the horizon. We are getting a small break in our weather today, but even as communities across the state are trying to clean up the mess left by the flooding, a winter storm now has Kentucky in its sights. Let's check in with our chief meteorologist, Chris Bailey.
Yeah, indeed, Bill. And all of this obviously coming at a really, really tough time for Kentuckians, where our rivers are still in flood and they're going to stay there for at least a couple more days. All the real estate you see shaded in green, those are along our rivers that are with flood warnings. That includes just about now the entire length of the Kentucky River as it empties out into the Ohio River. You got Stoner Creek into Paris. You got part of the Licking River into southern Kentucky, the Cumberland, eastern Kentucky, the Tug Fork, the Leviza Fork of the Big Sandy, and again, the Ohio that's going to have serious flooding over the next week, give or take a little bit, depending on where you are. All right, through Friday, that first alert weather day continues. River flooding is ongoing. Winter storm taking aim at the region over the next couple of days. Several inches of snow on the way to central and eastern Kentucky with bitterly cold temperatures that are going to follow suit. All the real estate that is shaded in the pink is under a winter storm warning. I don't think this is expansive enough. I'd add another county or two to the north of this. We should also have these counties into southeastern Kentucky that are all included within that winter storm warning. The potential for a widespread 3 to 6 inches of snow is certainly there across most of Kentucky, 1 to 3 in the north. Locally higher amounts, I've had to add that qualifier again because I do think some amounts here may push greater than 6 inches of snow, up to 8 across far southeastern Kentucky and into western Kentucky, where you're closer to the heavier precipitation as it makes its way on in. First Alert Radar Network right now, nothing going on across Kentucky. There's a little band of some light snow that's going to try and streak toward the Lexington Metro late tonight, early tomorrow morning. That may put down enough snow in the morning to create some slick roads, and then the storm itself won't arrive until we get into tomorrow late evening, and this is more so Tuesday night into Wednesday and Wednesday night when we're likely to get in on several inches of snow. We'll put together the timeline on when this storm impacts where you live when I come back here in about 10 minutes, Bill.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. We do want to get back now to Amber, who is live today in hard-hit Hazard. And Amber, we know that this is just one of the areas in eastern Kentucky that has been hit so hard by this historic flooding.
Yeah, this is a flooding situation that spans most of the state and really impacts so many different counties. Pike County is seeing probably the worst of the damage and high water. Just a few hours ago, Governor Andy Beshear was in Pike County, where officials say 3 of the reported deaths happened. And during a news conference there in Pikeville, the governor is saying that Eastern Kentucky was the area of the state hit hardest by the floods. But he says the people of Eastern Kentucky, they know how to weather a storm.
Somebody once told me that God saves his toughest challenges for the toughest people. And Eastern Kentucky is filled with tough, strong people. But I want you to know the rest of Kentucky, and that whatever I can do, the rest of the United States is going to stand with you here in Eastern Kentucky to make sure we get this job done.
Well, back here in Perry County, it has also been a really long day for a lot of different folks. For some business owners along Main Street here in Hazard, it was the first chance today to get into their businesses and into their buildings to see just how much that they have lost. Kevin C. Johnson is a longtime attorney here in Hazard, and Saturday night he sat at home helplessly watching as the water slowly overtook his law office. The sounds of cleanup are loud and clear along Main Street in Hazard. Mud so thick in places that it's hard to even move. Kevin Johnson's law office has been along this stretch of Main Street for years. The North Fork just within eyesight. Up until Saturday night, he had only ever seen water at his front steps.
It always stops. This time when it didn't and started coming underneath the door, I knew it was going to be different.
His cases, clients, and day-to-day business now on hold. Johnson admits it was hard seeing the devastation firsthand.
It was bad. I mean, as you can see, now we don't have anything, but it was just everything was scattered. All of our files, our furniture, my kids' pictures, everything.
Johnson told us he knew the exact moment his office had been inundated with water, watching at home on security camera. What are you thinking when you can see that, I'm sure, at home?
You're helpless.
Yeah.
When the camera was set right here.
Really?
Yeah, so it got up that high. I could see what was going on till then. But by then, all the furniture was floating out here.
Help, though, has arrived. Members of the Hazard High School football team, the coach, and even complete strangers, all pitching in to help get mud and debris out.
They just drive by and see us over here, and they just stop and get out and come over and pitch in.
Kevin W. Johnson says thanks to electronic backups of all of his files, he will be able to get back to work. He doesn't know when that will be, but he will be able to get back to work. But it will take some time. And it's really amazing to think about the water that came out of the river here, out of its banks. I'm about 5.5. It would have been completely over top of us and then slowly made its way over to that area of Main Street and really left a wake of destruction behind it. That water now obviously receded. You know, there are so many areas that are dealing with destruction right now. One of the other areas hit hard by this weekend's flooding is in Lee County. As the water levels there begin to drop, the true scope of the damage is still coming into picture. And WKYT's Jessica Umbro, she has been in Beattyville all day for us today. She's hearing from officials and business owners there who are navigating this situation, and they have their own cleanup process. So good evening to you, Jessica.
Good evening, Amber. We're here at the intersection of Main Street and Bradford Streets in Beattyville, and situations have kind of changed. Earlier today, this entire intersection was underwater. Now it's kind of diverged into two separate areas where you cannot go through. We even saw somebody going on a canoe to travel down Main Street. And we talked with Lee County Search and Rescue earlier. They said that there are about 50 businesses that have closed their doors today because they're that impacted by the floods.
As I told my brother who called yesterday over and over, I said, this is not in my hands and there's nothing I can do to control it.
Blanche Arnold is the owner of Blooming Sensations in downtown Beattyville. She says her building is on the second level, and while the flooding is staying in the basement, she can't get into her building. After rebuilding from a fire and floods in 2021, Arnold says she was hopeful that this wouldn't happen again.
I moved there because I thought this is a safe place that doesn't normally flood. And it flooded. You know, other than moving all of town out beyond town, I don't see how you could actually do that.
Robbie McKinney, manager of Lee County Farm Bureau Insurance, shared these images of what his business looks like. He estimates there's about 2 to 2.5 feet inside. McKinney says in 2021, that flooding reached 4.5 feet.
We came into 25 with such anticipation and that this was going to be so much better year, and here we are.
McKinney, riding around on his kayak, says in 2021, people came to help Beattyville, and in 2022, they went to help those in Jackson's floods. And this time, McKinney says everyone in this area has that need in common.
Emotionally, it's overwhelming when people come and help you and don't expect anything in return, and then you go and you help them and you know what they're feeling inside. It's unbelievable.
Well, that member of Lee County Search and Rescue told us that the ideal goal would be for business owners to be able to get back inside tomorrow. However, with that weather that we're predicting adding on top of this, that is a very lofty goal, and that is the ideal situation, but they'll have to wait and see. For now, live in Beattyville, Jessica Umbro, WKYT.
Yeah, this impending weather just sort of added insult to injury. Jessica, thank you. You know, agencies from all across the Commonwealth are responding to this statewide flooding. WKYT's Maggie Rickerby talked to some of those emergency responders on the front lines about what they've seen during all these rescues.
Crews from the Scott County Fire Department returned Monday morning after working in rescue boats for 41 hours straight.
With the dirty water that you're operating the boats in, it's impossible to see any sort of debris, especially when you're operating at night.
Zach Anderson is one of the first responders sent to eastern Kentucky. What he did see was devastation.
A lot of houses just completely covered in water, businesses overwhelmed with water. A lot of it was people trapped inside houses where the water had risen from a creek that was right behind their home or something like that and completely surrounded their home.
Anderson says crews also rescued folks trapped on top or inside of cars. Many had driven into high water thinking it wasn't as high as it actually was.
The water's flat on the surface, but you don't know what the road is doing underneath that water. So it might drop down deep enough to get water into the engine and your car stalls out and then you're stuck there.
While Anderson says residents were more prepared this time compared to the 2022 floods, many in the state have still lost everything.
And as you can see behind me, the Kentucky River is still seeing high levels of water as crews continue to respond to areas in need. Maggie Rickerby, WKYT.
And Scott County is not the only team helping out their neighbors. Maggie's going to have an update for us coming up from the Wolfe County Search and Rescue. That's coming up tonight at 6. Meanwhile, Bill, we are going to be here in Hazard and bringing the very latest from here, but also across this region. Even at this hour, past 5 o'clock, you can still hear the sounds here of people pulling stuff out of their businesses. You can hear the beeping noise of some of those skid steers out here working. And we know that these folks, some of them have been through this before and they're doing it again. And I think one thing that adds an extra layer to it is just really this cold that we're feeling out here today. The sun has been out. That has helped immensely. But the cold and then the thought of more weather to come in terms of snow is just really hard for a lot of folks when you're in the middle of this kind of cleanup and devastation.
Yeah, and especially having to rush, as you said, because of the weather. But we know the resilience of the people of eastern Kentucky. Amber, will check back very shortly with you. The American Red Cross is working to help those who have been impacted by the floods. Lynn Washbish, the executive director of the Bluegrass Area chapter of the organization, tells us right now they're providing cots and blankets for those whose homes were damaged. As she tells us, they have around 50 people on the ground across the region doing what they can to help people out.
We've been impacted with a lot of the flooding as we saw coming in Friday night. And at this time, the Red Cross is preparing those areas right now and operating a couple shelters. We've got about 50 Red Cross workers on the ground to help those that were affected by the floods.
And Washbish tells us the organization is working closely with officials in affected areas and will be on standby for additional support. WKYT and WYMT are partnered with Appalachian Regional Healthcare for a flood relief drive. ARH is asking for supplies to help clean up, as well as essential items like food, water, and clothing for families impacted by the floods. You can find the full list of accepted items, or you can make a monetary donation online. Drop-off locations for items can be found at the ARH System Center in Lexington, that's off Winchester Road, ARH Disaster Relief Center in Hazard, and at the former Highlands ARH Cancer Center building in Prestonsburg. All of those locations will be open between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. And stay weather aware by scanning the QR code on your screen and downloading WKYT's First Alert Weather app. It's free, and it will then give you radar access and real-time weather alerts. Coming up on WKYT News, how do places near rivers and lakes handle flooding events like the one we've seen this week? We're going to take a look at how flood walls and dams can help manage the rising water and save lives.
And now comes the snow part of this next winter storm. It is on the way. Several inches of snow and brutally cold temperatures set to follow. We're tracking them both in just a moment.
Now, WKYT First Alert Weather with Chief Meteorologist Chris Bailey.
Hi, everybody. Flooding concerns continue across all of Kentucky along those rivers right now. Thankfully, the flash flooding, the general flooding subsiding. Now we got to wait for those rivers and to get back to within their banks. And the farther downstream you are, the longer it's going to take for those waterways to settle back to within their banks, unfortunately. Now we're gearing up for more in the way of active weather, and this time it is Old Man Winter rolling back in. WKYT First Alert Weather Day. It's going to take us through Friday. Flooding and a developing winter storm. River flooding does continue. We've got that winter storm moving in, several inches of snow on the way. Bitter cold temperatures will follow that up. Here you go with all the rivers that are still in flood. You got the Kentucky River, the Red River, the Cumberland, Leviza Fork, the Tug Fork of the Big Sandy, parts of the Licking River, and then the Ohio River that is scheduled to rise for the next several days. All right, winter storm warning is out for a number of counties across Kentucky. I would probably add another county to the north of Interstate 64 to this, and I would highlight those 4 counties that stick out like a sore thumb into southeastern Kentucky that are surrounded by winter storm warnings. Snow's not just going to magically decrease there and then increase a county over. Winter storm timeline. Here's what we're dealing with into Tuesday. There's a band of some light snow that's going to make its way on into town from west to east. Some slick roads will develop. Not everybody gets in on this. I do think the I-64 corridor has a better chance than everybody else. Tomorrow night, that winter storm arrives. Snow develops from west to east. Into Wednesday, some of that's going to be heavy, especially early in the day and especially along and south of Interstate 64. And then Wednesday night, here comes a little upper level system that is tagging in behind this that can sometimes overachieve. I think that can drop an inch or 2 of snow just Wednesday night alone, area wide, with bitterly cold temperatures. All of this snow is going to fall with temps that are much, much colder than normal. And again, that little stripe of some light snow, this is just tomorrow morning. This isn't the winter storm. This is kind of the opening act with that little stripe of some 1-inch snows. 1 to 3 inches total northern Kentucky. Along that 64 corridor and south, I think a general 3 to 6 inches of snow is going to fall with some locally higher amounts. Now, the chance to get greater than 6 inches is with us across western Kentucky. The chance to get greater than 6 inches is with us here into southeastern Kentucky as well. Those are the areas where I think you've got a little better shot at 6+ inches. Now, can somebody within this area, south of 64 especially, check in with a little more than 6? Yep, we can. That's why I've added that locally higher. I just think the better opportunity is across the west and the far southeast. First Alert Radar Network right now across Kentucky, where we are dealing with some light snow streaking at us from parts of Indiana and Illinois, all of that making its way through town. Low pressure coming out of the Rockies that's going to be on top of us, and that is going to be our winter storm maker as we go through the next few days. Hour by hour forecast. Pick out the location closest to you, and we are dealing with that snow that spreads in tomorrow, light though it may be, does a disappearing act, Then the main show streaks in from western Kentucky into central and southern parts of the region tomorrow evening. A look at this by sunup on Wednesday morning. Boy, it's snowing to beat the band. Temperatures in the teens. We may stay in the teens for the better part of the day. Not only Wednesday, but especially into Thursday. Friday morning, 0 is a possibility for lows. Wind chills during that time are going to be below 0. Starting at times on Wednesday, and I think a better chance Thursday and into Friday. That is just brutal stuff this week.
Well, it is. I mean, it just adds to the trouble.
It does, because a lot of hardship is currently underway, and this is just going to add to it.
Yeah, we're hoping folks do find shelter and certainly
can stay warm.
Deal with this. All right, Chris, thank you. Water levels have not reached their peak in many areas. Some rivers won't crest until sometime tomorrow. WKYT's Kelsey Soto is joining us now live in studio with a look at some of the numbers and what will happen in the coming days. Kelsey.
Well, Bill, every body of water is different to be considered in flood stage, so we went ahead and made up some charts and graphs to kind of show you what these communities are dealing with. At the North Fork of the Kentucky River in Hazard, take a look. They actually started at their low point there around 5 feet Saturday, but by Sunday they had swelled to just over 30 feet, and that kept them in the moderate category. We're talking over at the Levisa Fork in Pikeville. They topped out at more than 46 feet, and they have slowly been declining since yesterday afternoon. And in Paintsville, completely different story. Those levels began climbing Sunday morning, and they are just now starting to even out around 40 feet. The Cumberland River in Williamsburg is about to crest right about now, about 31 feet. That's where the dams and flood management come into the equation. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, actually based in Nashville, helps to store the water in the Cumberland River Basin. That includes Wolf Creek and parts of the Cumberland River through Middlesboro, Pineville, Barberville, and Williamsburg. Over at Martins Fork Lake near Harlan, based on yesterday's numbers, there they reached an all-time record levels back in 1998. Now, many communities installed floodgates to try and prevent the flow of water into their cities and towns. In Pike County, their problems came from the Levisa Fork. The North Pikeville floodgate was actually installed within an hour and taken down on Sunday evening around 5:15. City Commissioner Allison Powers says just one other time since she's been alive have they put that wall up. That manpower came from many first responders, police officers, firefighters, and even dispatchers. Engineers say there is still more work to be done when controlling the flow of water.
And then we'll slowly release it over the coming days and weeks, and we'll monitor downstream conditions to make sure that as we release that water, we're doing it safely. And we're always, top priority is keeping the public safe.
Well, David tells me thanks to some great forecasting, they did have sufficient time to plan and make arrangements. He says they actually stopped releasing water ahead of that rainfall that came on Saturday just to make room for the additional precipitation. Bill?
Yeah, those flood control projects over the years have made a difference. Thank you, Kelsey. Welcome back, by the way. Next on WKYT News, officials with the Trump administration set to meet with Russia to discuss peace talks to the war in Ukraine without input from the Ukrainian president. What Volodymyr Zelensky is saying about his country being left out of the discussion. Welcome back to more WKYT News. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and other Trump administration officials are set to meet with their Russian counterparts in Saudi Arabia tomorrow to discuss an end to the war in Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country was not invited to the peace talks and any deal made without Ukraine will not be recognized. Meanwhile, other European leaders also shut out of the peace talks held an emergency meeting today.
This isn't just about the front line in Ukraine, it's the front line of Europe and of the United Kingdom. It's about our national security.
And Trump is set to meet with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in Washington next week. WKYT News at 5:30 is coming up next. A reminder, you can watch us tonight and every night at 10 on the CW Lexington. Stay with us for more news.